happy with what he considers to be an attempt to minimize the misconduct on the part of the National Security Ministry.
Indeed, it is, and this is how it puts it. It says that the ministry sought to minimize the misconduct of its operatives by describing the criminal assault against the person of Mr. Kuda as merely, quote, inappropriate. The CDD says this is regrettable as it does not send the right signal or deterrence to the officers of the national security apparatus. And that the center also awaits the speedy conclusion of the National Media Commission's investigations into the complaints that were filed by the City FM on the matter. But on the back of that also, Evans, it indicates this statement. Let me read it to you verbatim. It says, indeed, it appears that the Minister for National Security has no proper or effective oversight of the ministry, or the National Security Secretariat.
No wonder they're asking for far more than just an investigation.
So it says that it's imploring government and the minister all reaching reforms in the national security apparatus and its operations as the problem highlighted by the Caleb Kuda incident is long-standing. It says it is recurring, and it says it is also systematic.
They're raising now the Ayawaso West Wagon by-election report, the Emil Short Commission report. They believe that possibly holds the solution to the problem they identify.
So they're calling for a revisit of this white paper that was issued by the Emil Short. Indeed highlights the importance of taking seriously the observations and recommendations of the Emil Short Commission. Among other things, the Short Commission recommendations on the fundamental human rights of the Constitution within their standard operating procedures. And then it says that it is clear from both the incidents at the National Security Compound involving Mr. Kuda and on the CTFM premises, including the attempt to arrest Miss Zoe, been heeded or implemented.
And they have a role for Parliament. They believe Parliament should take this more seriously than they have so far.
Yes, exactly. And if you look at the part that I read to you verbatim, it's indicated the Secretariat and the Minister himself. So it says that CDD is calling on Parliament to assume its rightful place as the People's Assembly and the principal government oversight body to ensure that the country has a national security system that, as they call it, is fit for purpose. It also says that a good place to start is to revisit, like I indicated earlier, Evans, the Emil Short Commission report and get government to commit to credible reforms, both in the way national security personnel are recruited and trained in the way that national security does its business.
I mean, and Gifty, this statement by the CDD is coming on the day when we confirmed that the man at the heart of this, brutality, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Ajiman, who, in fact, in the Ministry of National Security's statement announcing the outcome of the investigations was found to have misconducted himself, is now also the commander. And his appointment to be a commander happened barely 24 hours after this statement came out announcing that he had been found culpable. He's now the commander of a very elite group in the Ghana Armed Forces, the 64 Infantry Regiment. And in fact, the timelines. And the further questions that the timelines are interesting. So this statement by the National Security Ministry, came on the 20th. And then 21st, there's a circular in the Ghana Armed Forces that lists the heads, the commanders of the various units. And his name pops up there as the man heading this particular unit. It's led to a lot of questions being asked. And one of the key questions that, of course, we need to ask tonight on the back of this is, if you read that statement that was signed from the Ministry of National Security, and in respect of Mr. Ajiman, it says the secondment of Lieutenant Colonel Frank Ajiman, Director of Operations at the Ministry, has been reversed. The officer is to report to the Chief of Defence Staff for further investigations and appropriate action. So the question to ask tonight is the further investigations happening at the Ghana Armed Forces? Are they doing that? Because that's the directive that came from the ministry. And then secondly, for appropriate action. Of course, the appropriate action will come at the end of the investigations. Question is, can he hold such a powerful position as a commander of an elite group while this investigation is happening? These are questions that a lot is happening.
We've been trying to get people who have worked within the military system to help us, with some bit of education on this. And indeed, Evans, if you look at if you like, assignment, call it assignment, of these people in commanding position in the military. You see at number 29 in the document that I'm looking at here right now that Lieutenant Colonel Ajiman is here in commanding position of this 64 regiment. So one of the security analysts that we've spoken to indicates that it's pretty usual practice where you have people who have been on secondment and who have been turned back, to their mother agencies to go back and occupy their usual positions. That is a security analyst. But I spoke to indicates that he's surprised because it is an indictment for somebody to be sent on secondment and then turned away. It's as if you have on the grounds of unprofessionalism. Sure about the processes, because the security analysts were saying although the military agencies work in hand in hand with civilian agencies, their profession when they're being turned back from secondment on unprofessional
Well, I spoke to a former serving officer, also a colonel, who makes the point that once you leave on secondment, your position is filled. And so
Exactly.
even if he was the commander of his return,
Pretty fast.
it says that simply doesn't happen because especially, and he brought up the sort of a comparison with when you are when you work for the UN, for example, the
Especially
investigations
when
are
there's
done.
an issue about unprofessionalism, and
Conduct.
that's an issue that Peter Tobu referred to with the police officers who went on a UN mission
When
and
they
were
returned,
accused,
yes.
and they were accused of some sexual misconduct.
Yes.
He says that when they returned, they were not allowed, to fill the positions that they had earlier until the investigations were carried through.
So definitely there are a lot of questions that the Ghana Armed Forces themselves will have to answer, and the security apparatus themselves. I want to bring in Dr. Kojua here on Top Story. Let me start with you, Dr. Sante. In your statement, you touched on this issue, that you believe the reforms that are required should be far-reaching, but you are also not happy with the attempt to minimize the conduct of, the misconduct of these high-ranking officers of the national security. Expand on why you think there was an attempt to minimize it.
Good evening, Evans, and good evening to your listeners. To have a national security that can respond to ongoing threats that we all face from external sources and internal, source issues, cyber security, insurrection, all kinds of things. So the national security outfit is a very critical body, and it needs to be modern. It needs to be fit in a. I think we have had some seminal moments, and one was Ayawaso. I think that was a real opportunity. What we all observed sort of shook us, and we thought that it would be an opportunity to really do some that rubbish, quite a lot of the report, which I think was very thorough. We all witnessed the engagement that went on and the statements that were made by officials of national security and so on. So we think we should not lose this opportunity again. We might not get another opportunity, and we'll have, a worse problem on our case. So we have Ubedu's case offers us another opportunity, that we should not ignore, and government should seize it to take on. This is similar to language that has been used before. When somebody kicks somebody in the groin, this is not inappropriate. That's an assault. When somebody slaps somebody from in his face, that's not inappropriate. It's assault. So I think one of the steps towards reform, towards reaching the goal that we are hoping for national security, is to at least admit the challenges in the character with which it was formed, and not to water it down. I know there are sensitivities and so on, but the point is that the first thing is to acknowledge that there is a problem, and that is the first step. So this was an assault that was committed by operatives of a security agency that is supposed to be the most highly trained to deal with all kinds of complex issues.
Talking about what
that was why we made that point.
Talking about watering it down, surprised to learn tonight that the man who, of course, in a statement issued and signed by the National Security Minister himself, was found to have as the word was used, broken the rules. The conduct was not in to his mother post as the Ghana Armed Forces. Surprised to learn tonight that he is now the commander of a very elite 64 Infantry Regiment.
Yes, I mean, national security, the ministry takes this very important steps that we all welcome and applaud. And we want to follow the next steps. And I'm very sure that when the letter was written to the public in revoking or sending back these officers, it communicated to the mother agencies that this is the offense that this person has committed. So whatever was communicated, it is strange that on the basis of that, even in terms of the armed forces own protocols, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in the army, but that it's code of ethics from an institution that he was seconded to. One would say that, just intuitively, everybody would expect that at least at the minimum, some inquiry, some investigation would happen first. I mean, there was no rush. It's not like the 64 Battalion is going into, who is under that cloud to be commanding, a position. So the whole thing is a little bit strange. I would think even that, remember, this is the National Security Secretariat, which is, this is a secretariat of the National Security Council. So something like that has happened, you would expect that the council would have to, convene, and that includes all these agencies.
Yeah, I still have with me Mr. Gaga. Mr. Gaga, so on this latest development, I've heard you say, I think we lost Dr. Santidem. I've heard you say that this.
Evans, first of all, we need to ask ourselves the question whether or not Lieutenant Colonel Frank Agyemang was the subject of investigation at the National Security Council Secretariat. And the answer is in the affirmative. And so their culpability then resulted in the revocation of their secondment to the National Security Council Secretariat. Now, in revoking their secondment, the Minister for National Security was very clear that they were returning them to their mother institutions, in this case the military and the police, for further investigations to be conducted with a view to taking appropriate action against the affected officers. Now, this position the Minister for National Security took was very appropriate for national security. He was and still remains a serving military officer, and so he is subject to the security, couldn't have dealt with him by way of imposing sanctions or maybe using him in rank, etc. The appropriate institution in this instance is the military. Now, what has the military done? A day after he was appointed as commanding officer of the 64 Infantry Battalion, that for me is a slap. I mean, in the face of all that happened at the level of the National Security Ministry. Has he been investigated by the military? Or is it the case that the misconduct for which the National Security clearly established, when the investigation now brings to the fore or puts in sharp focus the very decision of government to jettison in this white paper the Emil Short Commission of Inquiry's recommendation that the operational unit, or if you like, the SWAT unit at the National Security Council Secretariat be disbanded. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Agyemang is a soldier, maybe somebody trained in combat to defend the territorial integrity of our country. He's not trained to dabble in civilian affairs, such as effecting arrests of journalists who are alleged to have filmed vehicles fact that the National
I mean, but Mr. Gaga,
Secretariat
on
would
that
have
point,
authority.
as a policy level, we've already decided that at the policy level, we've made a decision that we need a police in this space, in this civilian
No,
space.
no, Evans, I'm talking specifically about the maintenance, the continuous maintenance of a SWAT team at the level of the National Security Council Secretariat. Remember that in law, I mean the law that sets up the National Security Council Secretariat clearly positions them as a coordinating council secretariat and gives them the mandate to double in operational matters. That is what you would have. So you have a soldier who ordinarily should not be performing police duties. Assume that mandate. So when Lieutenant Colonel Ajiman took part in the torture of Caleb Okuda, definitely he was performing police functions. Normal interrogation of civilians is the core function of the police service, not military officers.
I mean, stay with me, Mr. Gaga. I mean, Dr. Sante, you suggest a few things that you want to happen now, including government simply implementing the white paper several parts of the white paper they accepted, including the training of these officers. Using human rights codes, etc. But in the wake of what we were just been talking about, the guy found culpable, now being given a serious senior position to command a very elite unit. Do you see a political will to implement some of these recommendations that you're asking for tonight?
Well, I mean, national security matters are matters that should concern all of us. I think that if government has already, indicated, and in the Ministry of National Security's own statement, it talks about its commitment to upholding the principles of human rights and democracy. And that's why I'm saying that the National Security Secretariat is the Secretariat of the National Security Council that is chaired by the President, that has all the agencies through the armed forces, so that there is a coordinated process to address this problem. And we have also asked that Parliament must get involved. It is the people's representative. And if these matters, because the more national security stays in the news and all these infractions are happening, and you are not getting consistent accountability, it even creates more insecurity. So it is a matter of urgent importance that we shouldn't be seeing or hearing what we are hearing. If you take an important step that everybody applauds, we should see a consistency, a progress in addressing those issues and holding people accountable for their actions so that the next group of people don't do it again. That's what we are saying, that this is another seminal moment. We should not let it, go by. So the institutions of our democratic structure who have to get involved, and we think Parliament has a responsibility. If it's a responsibility that it has neglected in the past, this is the opportunity to redeem itself.
Yeah, I mean,
we have to take this matter seriously, but not just to either call the minister or demand that they get an explanation of what has gone on, but to ensure that whatever reforms and commitments that are made, there is a constant report to Parliament that can verify that they have actually been implemented this time round.
I mean, thankfully, James Agaga is on the line. He's a ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee. James, is this something that you see a consensus among your colleagues to pursue?
Yes, as I have already given indication that the ministers responsible for defense and national security definitely will have questions to answer before Parliament for what has happened in respect of the appointment of Lieutenant Colonel Ajiman as commanding officer of the 64 Infantry Battalion, when in fact Lieutenant Colonel Ajiman should be facing investigation. So, for instance, Minister for National Security will have to tell us the scope of investigations and what the findings actually were. Then the Chief of Defense Staff and the Minister for Defense will also have to explain the settlement has been investigated at all, because if you look at the time the National Security Council Secretariat relieved him of his secondment, it took only a day. And I do not think so as to exonerate Lieutenant Colonel Ajiman to pave the way for his appointment as commanding officer of the 64 Infantry Battalion. So, yes, the calls by the CDD is welcome. We definitely will have to exercise our oversight mandate to ensure that there is sanity in our security sector. We will not...
Dr. Kojo Asante with the CDD. More on this on Newsstand. Of course, also join us on myjoyonline.com for details of this. You can find a story about the appointment of Colonel Ajiman as the head of the 64 Infantry Regiment on the page there with a